Hello everybody and welcome to today's webinar. I'm joined today by René Tuinhout and he is going to be presenting passionate dating for testers and vice versa. And this is the third and final webinar as part of our Best of EuroSTAR webinar series. And it's going to be a fun webinar. It's plenty of interaction, lots of questions and polls. And during the course of this webinar, René will be asking you questions which he would like to get your feedback on. So if you want to get involved with this questions here, what you have to do is just type into the questions field on your control panel, and René will then go through the answers afterwards. And after the webinar, we will head across to Test Huddle, where there will be a discussion taking place around this webinar, and if you have any other queries or feedback you want to pass on to René, you can do so there. And I've just shared a link with you, so you can find out a bit more about this by clicking on the link. I'm now going to hand you over to today's presenter, René. Hello, René.
Hello, Dara. Thank you for the introduction. Go. Yes, great. So, welcome everyone to, well, as Dara said, my presentation, Passionate Dating for Testers and Vice Versa. This is a webinar, so I'll be going through the slides by pushing some buttons, and it may take a while before the next slide pops up, so bear with me for that. And now, without further ado, let's start. And let's see if I can actually get the next slide to your screens. Dara, I'm trying to do it, but it doesn't seem to be working. Pressing the next button now. Pressed it several times now, so apologies for the audience. If yes, there we are, the first slide, passionate dating for testers and vice versa. So let's go on to the next slide, because you already knew that. And not working again, so I'll try clicking them. I was advised not to do that, but Dara. I have another screen monitoring what you see, dear audience, so I can see it when you see the next slide, so it won't be too fast. Right. So the program. First thing, well, what are we going to do basically is get introduced, and as Dara said, there will be some interaction there. I'll try to pop up everything on the screen. Yes, there it is. We'll get introduced. Then we'll talk a bit about techniques, and after that we'll talk a bit about the cuddly part, the dating, because that's what this session is all about. So before we start all that, this is a webinar, and some things to explain about this webinar because it's interactive. On some of my slides you'll see this icon, and actually that means please raise your hands if you agree or if you fit into the category. So if I would ask now, are you in this webinar, then you could raise your hand. You'll see the raise hand button in your interface. It's, well, there is just show you, but it's on the left hand side of the files and options thingy. You'll see the exact icon as I had it here. There's another thing I would like you to do. Sometimes I have questions in a poll, so that's A, B, C, D, and I would like you to flag the right radio button so we can see what everyone else is thinking, and later on we'll share the ideas you shared with us in the poll. So now let's go on to the actual presentation, and like I said, first thing on the agenda is to get acquainted. So let's do that. Go to the program, and as I said, let's get acquainted. Waiting for the slide. There it is, a bit fast. And there we are. First, a little bit about me. If the slide pops up, when the slide pops up. We'll wait for that to happen. Seems to be a bit slower than when we were rehearsing this, but it all can happen. There it is. A thing about me, this is me in the working life. I'm a test analyst, test engineer. I've been a test coordinator. At the moment I'm a tutor and a test advisor, test manager. I'm the co-author of a book on testing, and I discovered a flaw in the boundary value analysis method, and I corrected that with the B3VA that you see in the right hand corner. Now, the lower part is me in a non-working life. I'm 42 years old. I live in Groningen, which is a lovely place in the north of Holland. I like reading books. I've given up on trying to play the guitar. That's why the red cross is through the guitar. And on the lower right hand corner you see this picture I would like to ask you a bit about at the end of this presentation. I'll enlarge it for you. It's popping up on your screens now. The question is, what is this? Now, as said, we'll get back to that later on. But if at any time in this presentation you feel yourself dozing off, which can happen because you might all be testers knowing a lot about techniques, then you could doze off if I'm discussing a technique you already know. So then please do not doze off, but start thinking about what is this. And you all know it, I'm sure of that, but what is it? So if you doze off, just think about that picture. Now, since you know a bit about me, we'll go to the next slide, which will be a bit about you. And I'll try and go to the next slide. There it is. So who are you? And now is where the buttons come in. So are you perhaps in testing? If so, and now the little icon should pop up. Oh, we have a black screen now. Ah, there it is again. And I was hoping to see the hand icon now. There it's not. But if you are in testing anyway, please raise your hand by using the raise hand button. Anyone in testing? Raise your hands. Ah, I see hands popping up. 1, 2, 3, 4 people out of the listeners are in testing. Okay, I'll try to go to my question, but slides may be frozen, so Derek, help me out there. If you just could click on.
Okay.
Right. Who of you is not in testing? Please raise your hands if you're not in testing. Give you 10 seconds to raise your hand. Find the button.
In fact, René, will I launch the poll?
Will
I launch the poll here and ask who's in testing, who's not in testing?
You could do that, but we have a poll who's in testing, who's not in testing. Yes, let's do that.
Okay.
So we'll launch a poll who's testing.
It's going to launch the poll here now, so if you take a second.
There we are. I am in testing, I'm not in testing. So please answer it by clicking the radio buttons. I'll answer it for me on my backup screen. I am in testing, so I'll submit the poll. Other people too, please submit if you are either in testing or not in testing.
Okay, I think that's all the answers come through there, René. So I'll close the poll.
Okay. And we can see the results on screen, perhaps.
And yes, I'll share those results here now.
Great. So 75% of our listeners is in testing and 1 person is not in testing. So let's get back to the slides then. You see my test huddle thingy now, Darren?
Now you're back on the slides.
And we're back on the slides. Great. So the next question is, who's in management? And we've got a raise hand there. So if you're in management, please raise your hand. Nothing coming in, so no one in management. Great. Well, I have to switch here. There we are. And something else. The next question is, are you either male or female? And I think we have a poll for that. Dara?
Sure, I'll launch that poll here now. So just like the last poll, if you just type in if you're male or female, and that should be coming up on your screen right now.
Yes, I see it. I'll answer it for me. See, organizers and panelists don't vote, so I can answer whatever I want. Okay. Do we have all the answers in there? Dara?
Yeah, I'll give it another second there to, if you haven't already typed in response, you can do so now. Doesn't seem to be any more coming through, so I'll just close this poll here and I'll share the results there for you now.
Great. 92% of attendees voted, and we have an exact even mix between male and female listeners. So welcome to all male and female listeners. If we were an audience, I would say, well, look around a bit and get acquainted, but we'll do that on the test huddle later on. And if you could go back to the slides there, then we'll do our next introductory thingy to get to know each other a bit on this webinar.
Okay.
There we are. Who of you are in a meaningful relationship? So, not dating for a day, but in a relationship. Please raise your hands if you are. Try to.
Shall I launch the poll as well there, René?
Oh, you have the poll for the relationship?
Yes, indeed.
Great.
I do indeed. Another poll for you guys. I'll just launch that here now.
It is more marvelous.
I guess it's great to see so many people in a relationship going into Valentine's Day.
Only tomorrow. I see 77% of people have voted. I don't think any more votes are coming in. 5 more seconds to answer, guys. 4, 3, 2, 1. That's it. If you could show the results there. Oh, on the last second someone answered. Great.
Okay, let me just put the results up here now.
73% of us are in a relationship and 27% are not. So hopefully there's a mix in this 27% of male, female, or whatever you like. We'll solve that on the test huddle. So many of you will know what I'm talking about by personal experience, and others will, well, on the next slides, see things they think, hey, that's a nice hint or tip, and others, the ones in the relationship, again, will think, well, I've never thought of it like that. But we'll see that if we get back to the slides. We're almost done getting acquainted. However, the other thing I'm wondering about is where you are from. And that should be on our screens in just a second. I try clicking. Yes, I see something moving on my screen. Yes, we have not in a relationship. But as said, I'm wondering where you are from. And that is going to be on the screen right now. Yes, there it is. Just because the poll is structured this way, we have a poll asking you if you're from the north of Europe, the east, the middle and the south of Europe, and England and Ireland together, or some other country that I haven't listed. Could you launch the poll, please, Darren?
I will indeed.
Thank you.
There you go.
Answers are coming in. 62% of you voted already, 85%. It's going fast. How great. And some equal thingies. Okay, so 5 more seconds to give your votes, guys. 4, 3, 2, 100% voted. How nice. Thank you very much.
Okay.
If you could show the results, please, Dara. And there they are. So the majority of people is from the United Kingdom or Ireland, Southern and Western Europe and other countries. Great, we've got people from other countries than listed. I'm quite curious who that is and where he or she is from, so please join us on the test later and tell us. And a slight minority from the Northern and Eastern Europe, but if you count that up, it's exactly 23% again. So let's go back to the slide.
Yes, you could also type into the questions box there as well. You could tell us where you're from if you like to, and that's another option.
That's a great one. So if you're the person or persons who answered other, please type in the box where you are from. And I have this box here, so I should be able to see it. So guys, not from Colombia. Welcome. So we've got an all-world audience. Marvelous. And we're waiting for these slides to get on our screens again. So And someone from the USA also. Thank you. Welcome, Michelle. We're waiting for the slides to pop up again. And then we'll continue our presentation or webinar. So while we're waiting for that,
you want the next slide?
I'm going to tell you what's on the slide.
You want the next slide, René?
No, yes, please. We're looking at a testable screen now. So.
Let me just move that along for you there now.
Okay.
Continue going.
Okay. We'll wait for the slide to pop up on our screens. But while we're waiting for that, I'll tell you what's on it. And what is on it is what I promised to do in this webinar. And that is, I'm going to try and tell something about testing techniques, some of which you might already know, and how they are equal to techniques when we date, when we try to find a spouse, a man or a woman. And I try to do that by giving some examples from the testing world and giving some examples from my personal life and mixing the two together, basically. And, well, we're going to do that as soon as we have the slide on screen. Lara, could you show the slide to us?
Yep, I'm just opening it up here now. It's just frozen on me there for a second.
Can happen. All techniques.
Apologies, I'll turn off the screen here again and turn it back on.
Okay.
And
thanks for you. You see the screen going blank now. So, definitely happening.
so, okay, so
has begun short.
we'll fast forward back to the correct slide for you guys now. Apologies for that little glitch there.
No problem. If you just PowerPoint, if you just press 6 enter or something, then you'll skip all the other slides.
It must be something to do with this Friday the 13th. If you're superstitious, you'll.
I guess so, yeah.
If you're superstitious,
tomorrow with Valentine's Day, it's a lovely day, but Friday the 13th is. I know I should have said another date, but no problem. We'll manage.
Okay, so I'm just going to go down to the slides we are on there now.
Yeah, if you could just go on to the slide which says, I'll tell you what it says. It says white box or black box. If you could go to that slide, which is slide number 11, then we'll fast forward a bit.
And slide number 11, white box, black box. And yes, we're back.
We'll wait for it to pop up on the screens of the attendees.
You should see it. You should see it popping up on your screen now.
Blue screens. It's definitely Friday the 13th, guys.
There we go. You can see that now, René?
There we go. Yes, we can see it. The attendees and I can see it. Okay, so the first thing I had to consider when I was going to do this presentation on dating and testing techniques, of course, the very first thing I had to ask myself, will I do this about white box or black box testing? And obviously, as some of you are in testing, but I'll explain for the other parts, white box testing is all about, and I'm waiting for a picture to go on screen now, but I'll press some buttons and hope everything pops up. White box testing is testing when you know what the inner workings of the system are. It's represented by this picture, which says, well, you've got some inputs and some outputs, but also you know what the inner part of the system is doing. Now, this is opposite to black box testing, and shortly a picture will appear for that too. And there you see black box testing, and you'll see that after I press another button, this is a black box. You only know the inputs and the outputs. Now, for my presentation, I had to ponder, am I going to talk about test techniques and dating white box style or black box style? And then it occurred to me that to be able to discuss dating white box style, I would have to know the inner workings of the human brain. And well, there are some suggestions of how the human brain works, and it is on the next picture. It's like this, but I don't want to go there with this presentation actually. So I decided to focus on, and there it is, on black box testing only. White box can be very interesting, but given the brain pictures you just saw, let's not go there. So I'll focus on black box testing. And I focus on several black box testing techniques, which are on the next slide, which will be on the screen shortly. I'll be talking about equivalence partitioning, boundary value analysis, decision tables, also known as cause and effect graphing, state transition testing and process testing, and if time allows, I'll talk a bit about A/B testing, agile, pairwise testing, and then in the end, I'll show you the end results for this dating using testing techniques for me personally. So let's start talking about techniques, which will be the next slide. Equivalence partitioning, the first technique. Equivalence partitioning, for those of you who are not in testing or took the course testing techniques a long time ago, was about dividing inputs or outputs into groups that are expected to exhibit similar behavior. And that's what you call a valid or invalid class. So for example, if I have a system that insures people who are 21 years or older, we have two classes, people that do get insured and people that do not get insured. Namely, people that are 21 years or older, they get insured, we call that the valid class, and people who do not get insured, we call that the invalid class. And what the theory of equivalence partitioning says is you can only test one value per group. Now this looks very similar, like something you do in dating, right? The very first question you have to ask yourself when you are a teenager, you start dating, what's the very first question you have to ask yourself? Ponder about it while the picture shows up on our screens. We'll wait for that, so it gives you some time to think about it. I'll try to get it on the screen. Because the very first question you have to think about is, and it would be nice if the picture showed it now, it definitely is Friday the 13th. There it is. The very first question you have to ask yourself is, do I want to be dating males or females, right? Now for me, and that is for me personally, I've made a decision in that. It shows up on the screen in a while, I hope. Right, that's me. So the plus is for valid classes. I like to date women and I would not like to date men. However, your choices might be different. Now the problem is, what equivalence partitioning says is you have to test for valid and invalid classes. Now there's a problem there for me, because that would mean I would have to test dating men. And I'm, well, not enthusiastic about that. However, our testing profession has an answer for that too. And I was hoping to see the raised hand button in view, but if you don't, I'll just ask you. There it is, the raised hand button. If you know what the answer is in the equivalence partitioning technique, please raise your hand or type the answer in the answer screen. And I seem to have misplaced my answer screen, but there it is. It's the chat screen. There, do you see answers coming in? There it is. I have got back my question screen. And there it is. Okay guys, so what is the thingy in equivalence partitioning to make sure that I don't have to test everything? No suggestions for that, I see. Well, the answer is coming up on the screen shortly. I just press the button. It's called coverage. In testing we've got coverage. And I could say, well, I'm doing only valid class testing. So I'm doing valid class coverage. So I decided to only test women. Not men. Again, your choices might be different, but for me, I chose women. And if you choose differently, All the classes will be valid or invalid. Now, equivalence partitioning also says you can test several classes, so not only males, females, but for example also within the aspect of legal age, older and younger women. The lovely lady on the right hand side to see is Miss Misao Okawa. She's born on March the 5th, 1898. She's 117 years old and she's officially the oldest woman on earth. And on the left hand side you see someone very much resembling Miss Yu Wenxia, the Miss World of 2012. However, Miss World pictures are heavily copyrighted, so I must stress this is not Miss Yu Wenxia. The real Miss World would not have this black thingy in front of her eyes, of course. So they're just representative for old-aged people and younger people. And equivalence partitioning says you can test several classes. Now, if I would, for me personally, I would say, well, I think the younger people are the valid class and the older people are the invalid class. However, what equivalence partitioning says is, it should be on the screens later on, is if you test, you can combine valid classes, but you do not combine invalid classes. So what it says, I could date an older woman, but I shouldn't go dating an older man. Now, ponder a bit on that. Why is that? Why shouldn't I be dating an older man? If you know the answer, please either raise your hand or, it's even easier, type your answer in the questions box. So, when using equivalence partitioning for dating, why should I not date older men? Right. Okay. That's the time. Let's see, yes, because then you don't know if the result is negative due to an individual class. Veerle, very good. Indeed, if I were to date an older woman and I wouldn't like it, it must be because the woman's older. It must be because of her age, because I do like dating women. If I would date a younger man and I won't like it, I know that it must be because it's a man, because I like dating younger people. But if I date an older gentleman and I don't like it, I don't know if it's because it's a gentleman, because he's older, or just because he's an older gentleman. Right? So never combine in equivalence, never combine invalid classes. So another technique used in dating, and you've done it, you've all done it, but maybe only now you realize. Thank you for your answer, Veerle. So the next technique used in dating is boundary value analysis. We know as testers that often at the boundaries of equivalence classes, in my example I said you are insured if you're 21 years or older, often at this 21 things tend to go wrong because they get programmed wrong because of this greater than, less than, equal to signs. So, and we can use this in dating too. So if I look at the younger, older equivalence class, I could say, well, there are some boundaries there. I'm 42 years old. So what boundary value analysis says is, well, you take one value to the left and one value to the right, which would be 41 and 43 years old, and start dating women that age. However, I thought that was a bit limited. So I tried to broaden the set of people I could date. And testing the boundary value analysis technique does have an answer to that. It gives the opportunity to broaden the boundaries. And if you know, please type why that is in your questions box so I can see your answers. So basically the question is, you see 41, 42, 43 here as boundary values. I would like broader boundary values. What in testing allows me to do that? And the hint is, the answer is already on the screen. Ooh, this is a difficult one, I think. If you're still typing, just hit the send button and then continue your answer so that I can see that answers are coming in. No, too difficult. Well, the answer is, oh yes, raise your hand and type something. You said that. There we are. The answer is granularity. Granularity means how tightly your borders fit. And you can choose another granularity. And I did. I chose to date people between 30 and 46. Now, the very observant viewer might see that the difference between 30 and 42 is bigger than between 42 and 46. But it's all explainable biologically by a Swedish study which shows women prefer older men, so I should be dating younger women, right? So let's continue to the next technique. It's decision tables. Now here is where we need all of you again. So line up at your answered questions. What other demands are there? So please raise your hand. We will not switch to audio, but please just answer your questions in the questions box. And my question basically is, so what other demands are there you would have for a spouse, for someone you would go to date? And we'll take a few seconds for that. So please type in your answers. What other demands are there? Come on, you must have demands on your spouses. Yes, intelligence. There it is, Tracy. I hear that a lot. What else? Easygoing. Yes. Juan, thank you. Another demand you have for your spouse. Someone else. To be intelligent, easygoing, and has a sense of humor. Oh, I hear that a lot too, yes. Some other demands. I was giving this presentation like, ooh, a nice bum. There it is, of course. Thank you, Ellen. The thing is, the women also say that. So I was giving this presentation in Riga, and someone said ginger haired, and of course someone else said brown hair, etc. So we've got intelligence, easygoing, sense of humor, a nice bum, something else, some other demands for a spouse. No one saying anything about money. All the presentations so far, someone said he or she has to be rich. Oh, a nice smile. Nice smiles and nice bums. So in about a minute we found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 5 demands. Intelligence, easygoing, has a sense of humor, a nice bum and a nice smile. Now, using decision tables, this decision table technique, for those of you who don't know it, basically you find all the conditions you have, you put them in a table, and you find actions to go with that. Well, we found conditions. Intelligence, easygoing, nice bum, nice smile, sense of humor. An action could be if someone meets all those demands, well, let's select him or her as a partner. Now, what we do in decision table technique is put all the conditions in the table, make sure that we don't have double things in there, like he's rich and he's not poor. Well, that's the same, so let's not put it in there double. And phrase positive, this phrase without not. It has some advantages I can cover in another course. Well, we covered all this with our 5, intelligence, easygoing, nice bum, nice smile, sense of humor thingy. So we could put this in a table. Now, we're trying to go to the next slide. Yeah, there it is. We'll make the decision table, and those of you who are in testing, they will recognize a decision table. Conditions on top, actions below, and we only have one action, select as a partner or go dating or whatever. There is a drawback. How many columns do we need if we have 5 conditions? Well, the answer to that is 5 to the power of 2. So there's 32 columns. So that would mean we have 32 dates to go to find out apologies, if a certain spouse is right for us. Right? So that's quite a large number. We'll go there. Yeah. Right, great large number, we said that. And there is an answer to that. I had many more conditions. This is a subset of the conditions I had. Likes to play board games, is female, is not too sports-minded. When I was in high school, it was he has to be in my high school class. And that's quite a lot of tests to do and combinations to test. However, we could reduce the number of tests, obviously. And we could do it by using the Moscow method. And for those of you who think I've never heard of the Moscow method, you have, if I explain it. It's about must, should, could, and there it is, and would. So what must my spouse have? What should he have? What could he have? What would he or she have? Right? Now there is one drawback with that. For testing this is perfect. You could see in software testing what's a must-have, a could-have and stuff like that. However, in dating there is a drawback, and it's called the rose-colored glasses. When we're dating, we tend to see the world through rose-colored glasses, and believe me, I did. For example, a must-have was not smoking. I did not want to date women who smoked. But well, then I met someone who smoked, and I thought, well, it's not a must-have. Let's say it's a could-have. I'll try to quit. I'll ask her to quit smoking, which never worked, of course. So we can use decision tables for dating. Now we can also look at testing in a different way using ISO 9126. And ISO 9126 says, well, you can test on the things you see on screen now. And I asked myself, can you test women for that too? What would it mean? Well, portability, everything on the screen immediately. Portability, is she willing to move? Actually, my current wife was willing to move for me. Efficiency, is she stress-proof? Reliability, is she reliable? Functionality, I know you all have your ideas about the functionality of your wife or husband, but I don't want to go there, and for usability I don't dare to go there. Now when I ask audiences what the maintainability of their wife is, they all tend to start speaking about money. When I ask women what the maintainability of their boyfriends or husbands is, they all tend to speak about food, which can be transferred into money. So basically maintainability testing in relationships has to do with money, I think. So something a bit off topic, ISO 9126, the one I just mentioned, is changed into ISO 25010. And nothing to do with dating, that's something I wanted to tell you in this webinar anyway. I think it's a quite good norm, and they split up the things to test in product quality and quality in use. Now, there was an mnemonic for the ISO 9126 list you just saw earlier. It was perfume. That's why the perfume bottle was in the left-hand corner of the screen. Now, there's also an mnemonic for all the things in the product quality list. And if you try to find it out, you'll see that the mnemonic is, try to get it, yes, C, perfumes. So it was perfume first, now it's C, perfume, so you can remember that. Now, there must be some very funny guys at ISO, because there's also an mnemonic for quality in use, effectiveness, efficiency, etc. Study it for a while, maybe you can see the mnemonic already. I'll show it to you. It's feces. So the mnemonics are C, perfumes, and feces. Something very odd going on at ISO, I think. So back to dating and testing. State transition testing, another testing technique. Do you remember this technique? It's about your alarm clock, basically. A system can be in several states. For an alarm clock it could be represent time. Then at some point, if the current time is the time set, it goes to loud and annoyingly beeping. If you hit the snooze button, it counts down 9 minutes. I can explain on the huddle later on why it's 9 and not 10 or 8 on most clocks. And then if you hit the snooze button and 9 minutes have counted down, you get back to loud and annoyingly beeping until you switch it off, and then it goes back to representing time again. Now, usually you see when the system is going from one state to another, above or below the arrows, and officially you also have to write down what happens then if you go from one state to another. In most cases the letter is left out because you can see in the picture what happens if the trigger is set. So if the current time is alarm set, obviously you will go from represent time to loud and annoyingly beeping. Now, Mr. Chow also said something about it, which is called Chow's coverage, but we'll skip that for time purposes. So what states exist regarding partnering? Well, basically at some point in life you'll find yourself being young and single and happy. And then a bit later on you'll find yourself older and single and less happy. And the big question is, can you go back? And the answer, unfortunately, is No, you can't go back, and why not? Because what happens is life, and life only goes one way, and you get older anyway. Now, are these the only two states you can be in as an individual? Of course not. We have more states. You could be older and single and happy, or older and single and unhappy. And there are even more states, older in a relationship, etc. You see them on the screen. And the links between all these states are more than you see here too. I'll show them to you. At least I'll try to show them to you. There they are. Now, we have a state transition diagram. So we could use this to test. However, there is a drawback. Because for every single arrow you see here, we've got the same trigger. Life. So when I'm in young and single and happy and life happens, I don't know where it'll take me. Will I be older and single and less happy? Will I be older and in a relationship and unhappy? Whatever. I don't know where the trigger life will bring me. So state transition testing is not a suitable technique for finding a partner. Now, there's also a technique called process testing, which basically says for process testing, you need to know if you input something in a process, what happens. It's called determinism. And although some people think life is predictable, I personally think it's not. So process testing is also not a suitable technique for testing life and testing relationships. Now, in a bird's eye view, some very fast other techniques, A/B testing. For those of you who don't know it, it's about comparing two possible solutions and then selecting the best. So, in the case of dating, I could be dating two people who fit my other classes, so female, younger, and then choose the best. Now, the thing is, I see there is something wrong with the animation there. The thing is, I told my then girlfriend this, and she was thrilled about it. She said, "Oh, you compare two possible solutions, and now you're dating me, so I am the best choice." The thing she didn't like was the thing that's in the technique, repeat this choice every few years. So she had something to say about that. So I think this is not a suitable technique when dating. We'll go to the next slide, which shows us another technique, Agile. Most of you have heard about Agile and the four major points in Agile. However, there are some sub-points that the Agile community has come up with, and they are splendid. Slides are going too fast again, but hey, no problem. I'll just pick a few. Satisfy the customer. Oh, my girlfriend and I agreed. Great for both of us. Work together. Marvelous. Point 6, conversations. My girlfriend melted. Oh yes, let's have long and great conversations. If it works, call it progress. Don't make it too difficult. For me personally, attention to good design. I like that. And simplicity. Reflect and improve. It's about evaluating. She liked it very much. But the thing she didn't like about Agile, obviously, was the work in teams part. So in the end, it turned out not to be a good technique for dating. Now, some other technique. Yep, there it is. Pairwise testing. For all pairs, whoops, too fast. Well, just for time purposes, again, not a good technique. And why not? Well, you can test pairs, but the technique says you should also test triples. Now, error guessing, that's a nice one. You try to think of what could go wrong, and if you know that, let's test that. And that's what you call a fault attack. So let's try that. If I cook good food, it could fail. My relationship could fail. So let's try cooking good food. And what happens? Yes, I learned. It doesn't fail. So cooking good food, I did a fault attack, and the system still was there, my girlfriend still was there, it didn't fail. So let's try another thing. It could fail when I cheat, so let's test that. And something flabbergastingly happens. Yes, indeed. My then girlfriend didn't like that, and I learned quite a lot from that. Not a good technique to use when dating. Now, a short summary so far. In daily life, we could use equivalence partitioning, boundary value analysis, and decision tables, and some non-functional testing. However, the other techniques I used are less recommendable when you start dating someone. Now, so what did I do, the personal part I promised you? Well, I chose another technique. I chose the exploratory technique. Basically what exploratory testing says is, well, test and work from what you learned from the first test and then test something else. And you can use other techniques while doing that. So I combined the one with the other. I, for example, used the boundary value analysis technique and thought, well, in these boundaries I said, who am I going to date? And it turned out I dated women between 30 and 42. Also, waiting for the, yep, there it is. Also, I said, I had a look at the conditions I had, so I used decision table testing. And I thought, well, let's Moscow those. Are they still all that relevant? And some disappeared. It didn't have to be in my high school class. And some got more important, like being communicative and accepting my oddities and being humorous. We found that one also, having humor. Right. So I used that technique too. And waiting for the slide again. Yep. So I could put that in a table. I skipped some conditions. There is a trick with decision tables in which you say, well, we can have some columns that we don't want to test, so I got those out of the way too. And then, using all that, in the end, I found out that if you're in love, time and time again, I saw the world through rose-colored glasses, and I stuff that should have been must-have, I made it could have or I would have, and that led to very good discussions with my then girlfriend, and it led me to being quite sad. But luckily, as I said before, you learn from exploratory testing. So, with another girl, I saw the world through rose-colored glasses, had quite interesting discussions, and was quite sad again. But in the end you learn. So I looked at the world through rose-colored glasses. Well, you know where this is going, guys. Had interesting discussions and was quite sad again, until in the end I thought I was all alone and I felt quite miserable. Until at some point in time, got a slide. We'll wait for that. At some point in time, I met her. And on the next slide, 9th of June 2012, there it is. We dressed up quite nicely. You'll see the photograph later. It's coming. I think there it is. Yes, we dressed up quite nicely. We did something else, which is on the next slide. We went to City Hall, where we had a nice speech, where this lovely lady you see here from the back first called me René, which is my name, and then called me Peter, which isn't. My wife had some text messages while we were on honeymoon, asking with whom she went on honeymoon, with René or Peter. And after the speech, we signed some papers. And from that point in time on, we'll go to the next slide. Yes, from then on, she added, and I hope we're going to see that on screen. Yes, she added my last name to her last name, which officially meant we were married. So, what did I do? I chose an equivalence class, females. I used boundary value analysis. I found out what my criteria were, conditions, and I used the Moscow methodology, and it ended me up there. Now, some requirement changes happened in the meantime, because on the 4th of September 2014, which is almost half a year ago, our firstborn son was born, and he is one floor down, sleeping nicely in his bed, I see now on the baby monitor I have there. So he's giving his father a nice time to give this webinar. However, there is something else I wanted to say about that. Looking back, exploratory testing proved the right technique for me to use in dating. I also learned that despair is part of the process, and changing requirements along the way can be a good approach, because you learn. And an afterthought. It sounded all familiar to me. Haven't we seen this process before in testing? Someone's having an idea, we're enthusiastic about it. In this enthusiasm we're forgetting about some relevant conditions, it's too fast, or we even consciously neglect those conditions. Then we're going to spend time and money on the idea, find out along the way that the world isn't as ideal as we thought, so we learn and we change the requirements. It looks a lot like an IT project. And like in love, when we start IT projects, we tend to look at the world through rose-colored glasses. And what the world really needs is people, one, who know that, and B, who can think about it and find out how to see if someone looked at the world in two rose-colored glasses. Is this person still getting what he or she wanted, or is it different? And basically, that's you, the testers in this webinar. So what the world needs is people who can look at the world, know that people sometimes see the world through rose-colored glasses, think about it, and make sure we, as a profession, deliver excellent products. So that basically ends this presentation. 3 minutes to spare. However, I promised you something. Questions we'll do on the test huddle later. So there we are. I promised you this one. What is this? If you know, please type it in the questions box. We'll give it some seconds. You all know it. I saw it on my honeymoon. I was flabbergasted, so I wanted to share it with you. No answers yet. Anyone? A slug, yes, that's suggested quite a lot. A slug on something. Some people say a kind of an apple with a slug on top. A tomato with a prawn or seashell creature living on top of it. Yes. Ooh, how creative, Alan. Thank you. I'll show what it is if the slide works. There we go. I clicked the button, so it's going to be on your screens in a couple of seconds, I hope. It's something you all know. I hope. There we go again. Yes, there it is. It's cashew nuts. Basically, cashew nuts are these thingies on top. And they get roasted and then they look like cashew nuts. The thing below is a fruit. And it's actually quite good fruit. For honeymoon, we went to the Gambia where my wife worked and lived for 6 months, and she wanted to show me that. And the people in the Gambia are flabbergasted that we just eat the nuts, because the fruits are quite good too. However, we as rich Westerners throw them away and just eat the nuts. That's why cashew nuts are that expensive, because we throw away most of the fruit. So that indeed ends my presentation and webinar on passionate dating for testers. I thank you for your listening to this webinar, but also for your cooperation in answering the questions. And I'll be on the test hub to talk a bit more about this presentation later on. And with that, I hand it back to you, Dara.
Thank you very much, René, for that. It was a really fun, interesting webinar, and I'm sure all the attendees seem to like it too. There was plenty of interaction. And as René just mentioned there, the conversation will continue over on Test Huddle. I've just shared a link with you there, so you'll be able to follow that link, or alternatively just go to testhuddle.com and you will see the discussion there ready for you to type your questions. The webinar is now over, and that concludes our Best of EuroSTAR webinar series. If you would like to check out what other webinars we have coming up, just visit the events portal over on Test Huddle, and you will see we've got webinars coming up in cloud, in mobile, in security, and there's a hell of a lot more to come too. So once again, thank you very much, René, and thank you to the attendees. Take care.
Thank you.